With the Investing News Network, I'm Scott Tibbles. We're at PDAC Day 2, and joining me now is David Erfle, founder of Junior Minor Junky. Thank you so much for joining me, David.
Thank you, Scott. Always great to talk to you.
So, Day 2, what are your thoughts on sentiments? Obviously, there's a lot of coronavirus concerns going along, as we were just discussing.
Yes, it's really interesting. Instead of shaking hands with people, we do a little shoulder bump, and a lot of companies haven't showed up. And I trudged all the way over to the 200 building this morning after I got up and to see a program, and I got there and it was canceled. So the crowd is a little sparse. I wrote in my column on Friday that I expected it to be a little sparse. So yeah, it's a very interesting environment.
Do you think that it's dampened sentiments? Has it changed the way people are feeling about the markets themselves, the things that they're here to learn about?
Oh yeah, I think so. I mean, you had the gold price reverse quite strongly last week, $125, and you have the virus fears. And I think they were maybe on the fence about coming on the virus fears, and then when the gold price did that huge turnaround, a lot of them said, you know what, I'm not even going to bother go to PDAC this year.
Well, let's drill down on that turnaround. So it's just on Friday, it dropped by a fairly significant amount in a short amount of time. What was that? Why did it do that? And can you see more of that happening in the future, or are we going to go back to normal perhaps?
Well, you know, it's either or right now. It's kind of a 50-50 scenario. I mean, it could go either way with this panic that's going on. I expect to see a bounce here, absolutely. But after the bounce, there is a good chance that we could see some more panic selling. So I have a substantial amount of cash that I'm sitting on, and I'm not buying any fishing lines just yet. So I think it's safe to say that there's a lot of questions out there right now, and it's a good idea to just take a deep breath, take a step back, and wait till some of this hysteria subsides.
So it's a common refrain that when there's uncertainty, you go into gold. How come Friday happened? Why would people suddenly be selling gold and wanting to have cash instead?
Oh, two words: margin calls. I mean, the gold price had made quite a move after it broke out of 1375, 1400. People had a lot of profits, and they had to take those profits to cover losses elsewhere. So it's a very liquid asset, and also if you take the juniors, which a lot of them got hit even worse, they're risky assets. So anything risky was sold first.
And so looking at the gold price, can you see it returning to where it was? It's already back up above 1,600 the last time I checked. Obviously, this is dating this interview, sorry. But can you see it going back up?
Well, it's going to be, I think the market's waiting to see when, it's not if, but when the central banks are going to bring out the big bazookas. The market's already priced in a half-point rate cut by the Fed. So that might even happen before the next FOMC meeting in a few weeks. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how the market reacts to that, and that's what a lot of people are waiting for.
Okay, and so moving on to another subject, I've been curious, so here at conferences, they're a great opportunity for investors to learn more about companies and speak to executives and figure out whether or not they're worth investing in. Another way that they do that is site visits. So, you know, from somebody that has been to a lot of site visits, what is your rating on what is the value of site visits? Is it worth trudging all the way out to some desert in the middle of nowhere to look at a mine?
Well, they're not all in the middle of nowhere, but yes, it's absolutely worth it. But I limit my site visits. You know, I won't go on a site visit that I feel is not worth seeing because it's a waste of my time. And if my readers and my subscribers see me going on this site visit and I do this write-up, they might get the impression that I like this company or I like this project. So I limit my site visits, and yes, they're extremely helpful because you get a feeling of the scope, of the scale of the project. You see if there's going to be any water issues, any wildlife issues, any community issues. You get to ask questions that you might not think to ask when you're sitting in a booth. You know, there's a lot more questions that come up when you're standing right there on the project.
And how would an individual investor find themselves going to a site visit? How do they go about going on one to start with?
Oh, just, you know, getting to know management. They ask me because I'm a newsletter writer and I write a column, so they want me on their site visit to take a look at their project. So yeah, I mean, just that's the best thing to do when you invest in anything, is get to know management. And a lot of these people are very open and very honest about their projects. And if they think that you're an investor that's seriously thinking about investing a substantial amount of money in their project, they're gonna invite you on a site visit.
And is there a sense of suspicion of when you go on a site visit that the company's putting their best foot forward, bringing out their finest china, to put it that way? They're really trying to fool you, perhaps?
Well, I don't know about fool me. I mean, I get to know these management teams before I go on these site visits. So if I'm suspicious of the management team in any way, I won't even bother going. So, of course, they're going to put their best foot forward, and it is something to consider. But like I said, I mean, if you get to know them first, feel them out, ask them all the right questions beforehand, then you can eliminate that aspect of it.
Okay, sure. And last question. So, given that the coronavirus scare is still happening and it still seems to have legs, certainly in the West, outside of China, what are your tips for investors? So investors that would come to a conference like this one, what are your tips for investors to best protect their wealth when there's so much panic happening?
Well, like I said, it's good to have a large cash position right now, and just take a step back and wait to see how all this plays out, because there's still a lot of panic, a lot of volatility. I mean, the VIX hit over 50 on Friday, and that's even higher than the level it hit during the 2008 panic. So it's always a good idea to get grounded and wait for the panic to subside, and with some cash that helps you do that.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts, David.
Thank you, Scott.
And again, I'm Scott Tibbles with the Investing News Network, and I've been having a chat with David Erfle of Junior Minor Junky.